please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Hi, very good morning. You're watching Trading Hour on CNBC TV 18. I'm Ekta Batra and with me is Prashant Nair, and we've started the entire week on a little bit of a sluggish note. So we're at around 10,459 currently for the Nifty. We did recover from the day's low, but now there is some amount of profit booking which is coming in at higher levels. But overall, you can also see that the advanced decline ratio is quite sluggish at this point in time. So it currently stands at around 800 stocks advancing, 1,174 stocks declining. On the National Stock Exchange, we have things such as crude prices as well as the Syrian tensions, which are really weighing on sentiment this morning. A lot of stocks in focus. Infosys, Cipla, Tata Motors, Group Finance, DCB are a couple of stocks which we will be discussing over the next 1 hour. Hi, Prashant.
Ekta, hi. Good morning. I mean, as we begin this Monday, I think one thing we must remember is that this last 3 weeks, markets have been higher. I mean, so the possibility of another fourth week higher, I mean, doesn't necessarily get diminished. But 3 weeks you've been up and up strong. I mean, the last 2 weeks the Nifty's added about 4% or so actually. So I mean, this is the fourth week that we'll see whether the market wants to consolidate a little bit or it wants to keep going higher and make it 4 weeks in a row. But for now, it's actually all very tepid. I mean, look at the sectors: oil and gas. You look at IT, you look at metals. I mean, PSU banks across the board, sectors trading in the negative. The good thing is that over the weekend, I was talking to people, and many were wondering what the impact on markets is going to be because of those strikes in Syria, which US and allies had conducted. But it doesn't look like there is very much by way of an impact at this point in time. It seems very contained, the damage, if any. I mean, you can look at, assets which usually indicate risk off. Look at oil, you look at gold, you look at the dollar JPY cross. Nothing. I mean, it's all pretty calm for now. So we'll track those global markets and the news flow closely, but it's a slow, tepid start to this Monday. Sudarshan Sukhani is with us as always. Sudarshan, good morning. Good to have you here. Thanks very much. I mean, your sense of things, we're off the lows, but it doesn't look like it's going to go. It doesn't look like it's going anywhere at this point. Your sense?
Well, it may not be going anywhere because we've had a very decent rally, and markets tend to consolidate after any rally or decline, after a trend, let us say. So this is probably the process of a consolidation, but there is nothing to suggest that that uptrend has come to an end. So what we are simply seeing is a process of consolidation, of getting some gains off the table as the market prepares for another up move. So the trade in the Nifty is to buy 10,400 calls in anticipation of higher levels next week. We are not talking of today at all. We are just positioning ourselves for better times in the next 5 to 7 days.
Okay, and from that perspective, what would your stock call be, Sudarshan?
Well, the stock calls are then therefore mainly in the mid caps. There are no themes currently going on mid caps. So we are looking at chart patterns. Wherever there is an attractive chart pattern, irrespective of the sector, I think that's an opportunity to trade in. So we start with Biocon. It's been an outperformer. A very bullish pattern is again being confirmed by Biocon. The second trade is United Spirits. After a deep correction, United Spirits built a base. That was a bullish head and shoulder. It's already broken from there. Higher levels are coming here. So that's the second buy in United Spirits. And the final buy is in Indiabulls Housing, which is a short-term buying opportunity. It had a good day Friday. That's probably continuing today. But don't overstay your welcome in Indiabulls Housing, although Biocon and United Spirits can be taken as positional trades.
Okay. So, Darshan, we had a lot of action in these agri-related stocks, pump stocks and tractor names, etc. Last week, we've got a press conference from the Met today talking about monsoons officially for the first time. Anything in that space looking good?
Well, yes, and I won't connect it with the monsoon at all because independently two stocks are looking very attractive. The first is M&M, Mahindra & Mahindra, and the second is Escorts. Both are blue chips. Escorts has now become a blue chip and M&M already was. So if you are looking for a positional trade for a few months, both stocks are perfect buying opportunities, irrespective of what the news on the monsoon is. I hope the monsoon will be good anyway.
Well, definitely, Sudarshan. We all need some respite from this heat. But two stocks which I wanted to quiz you on. Group Finance, where would you see it go from current levels? It's already outperformed year to date. It's up 26%. And the sluggishness in Tata Motors.
Well, Tata Motors was a short sell in the morning show, and that continues. I am very downbeat on the stock. Any rally in Tata Motors should be used to either exit or build short positions for traders. Group Finance is a much better stock. At current levels, I don't know whether you can buy for an investment or a positional trade, but whenever there is a dip, and I think the markets will give us a dip in the next 2 months, it's a buying opportunity.
Just look at IRB, Sudarshan. You know, middle of last week, there was some excitement. It had taken out some earlier resistance levels, etc., but it failed on Friday. Any thoughts?
No, but IRB is not a stock that I would recommend for buying at all.
Okay.
So if it failed, that's just a part of the process of just randomly moving here and there. I wouldn't take it.
Okay, all right, Sudarshan, we have a couple of Twitter queries now. Our first question is from Chandrasekhar. Wants to know if you can buy or he can buy JSW Steel at current levels.
Well, I think he can buy JSW Steel at current levels. The stock is an outperformer and likely to continue to be so. So go ahead and buy it. Be an investor, not a few days trader.
We've got another question coming your way, and this is from Manish. He's got 1,000 shares of HCL Infosystems. He's paid 57 rupees and 50 paisa each for them. He wants to know if he should hold or sell here.
Oh, he should hold. But don't have a holding period of 2-3 months, because 2-3 months is never enough for a stock to show its sort of bright side. Be a long-term, be at least a holder for 1 year, and I think you'll make money in this.
Okay, all right, Sudarshan. Now we're going to let you go on that note. Thanks very much for joining in and talking to us. So those are some queries being answered by Sudarshan as well as some technical calls. We have some more strategies lined up. Rahul Shah is joining in to tell us what he's strategizing the start of the week in the F&O space. Rahul, hi, morning. Over to you then.
Morning. I think two sectors which have been doing quite well since last few sessions. One is IT and what we've seen is financials. So I think one should look at buying those stocks from those levels. So I've identified two longs from that sectors. One is IndusInd Bank. This is a stock which has hit the all-time high from the entire banking space again, and in spite of the bank nifty still away from its all-time high. So I think IndusInd Bank, one can go long with a stop loss of 1840 and target of 1920. Again, we've seen a very good rally in IT space. So I think IT still looks attractive from current levels. And in that space, I think Hexaware is one of my mid-cap IT stocks one can go long on. So technically, stock has given a decent breakout. So I would recommend going long on Hexaware with a stop loss of 407 and target of 430. And thirdly, one short call from the metal sector. I think we've seen in metal, except for JSW Steel, most of the steel counters are refraining going out from other higher levels. So I think one can go short on SAIL with a stop loss of 78.50 and target of 72.
Okay, all right, Rahul, we're going to let you go on that note. Thanks very much for joining in. Well, there seems to be some amount of relief which is coming in for Jaiswal Neko, where Supreme Court has now stayed the referral of Jaiswal to the IBC by the RBI, and I think this had happened all the way back in December, where the RBI had referred the company to the NCLT. So we're going to get Ashmit to talk a little more about this, give us a background. But like you can see, that 8 rupee stock is seeing some amount of momentum. It's up around 3.8% on the back of that news. We do have Ashmit with us to fill us in on the proceedings as well as what took place. Ashmit, over to you.
Right, so what we're picking up is yet another development as far as the IBC process and the way the law is evolving is concerned. Jaiswal Neko, interestingly, had moved the apex court, and this after they had suffered disappointment at the hands of the Bombay High Court. The issue at hand essentially is the December referral that the RBI had made. RBI in December had referred a number of companies, including Jaiswal Neko, under the IBC to the NCLT, that's the Insolvency Code. The question, however, being posed by Jaiswal Neko essentially was that they were already in advanced stages of talks with the lenders with respect to their master restructuring plan. So that restructuring talks were underway, that the lenders were on board, and that this was an exercise in failure if the referral was made because there was already restructuring talks underway. They also made the submission that, in fact, even the lenders appeared to be on board with the idea of restructuring, that their interest would be best served provided there's a restructuring can take place and not necessarily a resolution proceeding or an insolvency proceeding. Having kept that in mind, the Apex Court appears to have granted interim relief. The Apex Court has directed for status quo to be maintained at NCLT, that no forward movement shall take place as far as this issue is concerned on the issue of insolvency. The bigger point here, of course, being that the Supreme Court will now take cognizance of this application and will now decide that if in case there are questions of law that arise out of a restructuring agreement that the lenders are engaged in, can that then serve as a deterrent to the RBI for referral? Should in such cases the RBI take that preemptive action and perhaps refer the case to NCLT? That's the question that the Apex Court will be dwelling on. For now, big relief coming in for Jaiswal, Nico. Insolvency, the IBC proceedings have been put on hold, and that question has now been taken into cognizance, the question of whether or not the RBI was right in making that referral on account of the restructuring proceedings.
Okay, I mean, as Ashmit started by saying, this is important for how this law, the interpretation of how this law will be implemented, the IBC code is going to be implemented and how it actually evolves. And this could have implications. Ashmit, thanks for joining in with that detail. It could have implications for other cases as well. I mean, the one that I can think of almost immediately is the Jayaprakash Infra case. I mean, back when the RBI referred that to the IBC, I mean, they were already in advanced stages, Ekta, of actually getting an agreement going with IDBI Bank. But it was pushed into the IBC nevertheless. Now, of course, that is now at a very advanced stage. I mean, we've got the highest bidder potentially. By the way, that case is also listed in the Supreme Court today. I mean, the home buyers case, in case of Jayaprakash Infra, is listed. And we understand that the promoters of JP Infra, which is Jayaprakash Associates, is saying that they should also be allowed to bid for their own company. I mean, they should not be disbarred. So, but it's I guess, compared to Jaiswal, Nico, this is in an advanced stage. So I don't know if this really affects that the judgment. But maybe in future cases it does sort of, have some impact. The Supreme Court allowing this to be called to be at a standstill at the NCLT. All right, we'll get back to that story with more perspective in a bit. Let's get some global perspective. Richard Harris, Chief Executive at Port Shelter Investment Management, is now joining in. Richard, thanks very much. Good to have you here. I mean, what do you make of the reaction, or the lack of a reaction as far as global markets go to the strikes in Syria that we saw? Is it so? Will calm prevail is my question. Or is a flare-up in markets, not on the ground, but a flare-up in markets likely at some point this week?
Well, I don't think necessarily connected with the Syrian side. Now, of course, Russia has said that there are likely to be consequences of this happening. Well, who knows what consequences might be. I mean, it's unlikely that Russia can necessarily attack anything. Then they may continue to be a thorn in the side of America. But in terms of a real retaliation, one has to wonder what would be in it for the Russians if they decided to do that. But clearly, the West has sent a message. It's a message that's been sent before, and I think it's been largely discounted by the markets.
Okay. Richard, I wanted your thoughts on Brent crude now. It's up around 15 to 16% from the lows that we had seen in the month of Feb. How much more do you think it's got to go? It's currently at 71, and what's your sense in terms of the near-term range we could expect?
Well, I think what we're really seeing with oil as opposed to other currencies is that we're seeing more life come back into the market. I think the markets are probably slightly worried about restrictions on getting oil out, either sanctions with Russia or restrictions coming out of the Gulf, if there's more trouble in the Middle East. So I can see that oil is reacting to this kind of increased worry about geopolitics, and that's nothing unusual. I think what is unusual is, of course, oil has been rising fairly solidly now for about the last 12 months. And that's despite the fact that shale pumpers are likely to come out and increase volumes as the price goes up. So I'm not particularly surprised to see it. You know, the world is still using a lot of oil. We are coming into the air conditioning season, of course, for oil and oil buyers. So I'm not terribly surprised to see it creeping up.
But in terms of a level that you might be working with?
Well, I think I've actually been saying since the beginning of the year that oil had the potential to be a surprise. And I was talking maybe even $90 at the beginning of the year. Now, that was on one of my slightly more what could go wild in 2018 themes. And oil was one of them. Now, I still think 90 is a bit high, but I think, 80 is maybe within reach now, looking at the momentum we've got. But obviously, eventually oil does turn round as seasonal demand eases. The markets may well see it a little bit too high, and we may see a relaxation of pressure or just an easing of concerns about supply from the Middle East. So I would see maybe the $80 level as being a peak, but at the moment it doesn't really want to seem to want to come back.
Mm-hmm. Richard, thanks very much. Appreciate you joining in with those thoughts. We will speak with you soon again. So that's the global picture. 1 point change on the Nifty. So it's as flat as they come. 10,460 is where the Nifty is at. Advanced decline is in favor of declines. 1,200 stocks lower. There's about 800 stocks higher. We stand at the mid-cap index is up about 0.4%. And advanced decline, as we sort of noted before we took that break, is in favor of declines. We were talking about oil with Richard Harris earlier, and he was saying that it's possible, according to him, Brent goes to 80. Manisha is here with a roundup of what's happening in oil and other commodities as well. Manisha, the big worry, of course, last 2 weeks has been oil.
Oh, well, absolutely. 8% up in the previous week, and we did see highs of $73 per barrel as well. So $80 does look like is possible on horizon. But most people feel that with the kind of prices high that we have seen, you will be looking at higher shale output as well, and that perhaps could pull the prices down. But then on the other side, you also have the summer season demand. It also has to do with the weather in sense of the northern hemisphere, and that can start impacting crude supplies. So all of those factors is something that most markets would watch out for by the third quarter, and that is where most people feel that you could see support come in for the crude oil prices. But the big story in the Indian markets, of course, would continue to be Akshaya Tritiya demand for the next couple of days. Remember, the gold prices have gained by 3% in this year. We did see the highest levels since August 2016 in the previous week itself. It has been volatile global equity markets, geopolitical tensions, weakness in US dollar. All of that has been supportive. But the other important point also is that this is the highest ever price in gold that you would have seen in case of Akshaya Tritiya. If you look at the last 10 years, we've started from 18,000 and we've seen prices of up to 28,000 as well in last couple of years. But we are trading above 30,000 rupees, almost 32,000 in the spot markets if you were to buy 999 purity of gold. And this is the highest ever gold price that you have seen come in for Akshaya Tritiya. Important also is that the Indian imports have been declining. For the month of March, we saw imports at 52 tons, which was down 49% on year-on-year basis. Indian gold prices are selling on a discount right now, and that really has been the case for last 3 or 4 weeks now. Even today, we are trading at a discount of around $3 to $4. But the only positive that the jewelers perhaps are seeking right now is that the wedding demand has been on the higher side. There is also an expectation that you might see coins and low-ticket size jewelry continue to be in demand, and that perhaps might lead to the fact that you are looking at higher buyings expected in case of Akshaya Tritiya. But T. Gnansekar as well now joins us to talk more about that. Gnansekar, hi. How have you seen the gold prices? What is your sense? And is it a good time to really buy gold, keeping apart, of course, the cultural and the symbolic, importance of this day?
You know, Manisha, the 30,000 level is a very significant psychological level in the minds of investors. As you rightly pointed out, in the last 10 years, it's never been above this for a long time. Even when, gold reached all-time highs internationally, I think it was somewhere near 35,000 briefly and then came down a bit.
Yes.
So it's that sentimental impact, because, most people have sold gold at these levels as soon as it reached 30. So this is more like a huge resistance point for them, and that makes it difficult for them to, really put more money into gold at this point in time. But the metal is such, the commodity is such that as it starts rising, then it will find more takers. So, and also the 3% rise we have seen so far, it's still not emerged from a larger range which it's been moving on. So once it does that, I guess a lot of people will follow through and start getting into the mode. And with the overall volatility in other asset classes, I think it's a perfect asset class at this time to be invested in because it can typically beat the inflation also.
Sure. So at these current levels, at these current levels, would you be advising to buy at 31 to 32,000 rupees as it's trading right now? How much would you advise one to buy in a portfolio? For how long? What kind of returns should one anticipate?
Like I said, as long as it stays at this range and starts breaking out, I think you'll find a lot of takers. And I feel that that's eventually going to happen now, though it is taking some time because, a lot of factors are now fueling that and gradually prices could now break out. So it is a buy on dips clearly because, even after interest rate hikes, it hasn't gone below $1,300 mark, which clearly says that, there's a lot of potential upside. And I think we are headed towards 1450 at least, which is something like 35,000 or thereabouts if rupee were to behave in the same range. So it is a clear positional buy at this point in time.
What also is your sense on the rupee then? Because we've seen rupee continue to decline. I mean, every single day there is further more decline as has been the case as well. And it would be important to watch rupee standalone also when you're making calculations for commodities.
Absolutely. I think, that because, most of these commodities are imported and it's imported in dollars. So it does have a huge impact on the domestic price as well. So keeping in mind the global developments, I think the dollar rupee is also a buy and dips right now, possibly headed to 6-6. So that in turn will further fuel the domestic price rally in the domestic markets. So, it's safe to bet on gold, silver at this point in time with the rupee also weakening.
Okay, all right, Manisha as well as Gyanashekhar, thanks very much for joining in, taking us through those commodity strategies. For the Nifty, we're still down around 0.2%, so no real incremental movement which is coming in.